So welcome to the JSM Fundamentals webinar with Expium. It's great to have you here. My name is Sam Ayers, and I'm one of Expium's Atlassian consultants. And today I'm just going to be walking you through JSM, also known as Jira Service Management, to highlight some of its strengths and capabilities. And I do just want to let you know that we have an ITSM webinar coming up next week that talks more in depth about ITSM functionality. And you can sign up for that webinar the same way you signed up for this one. And we'll post a link here in the chat momentarily for that webinar as well. So jumping in here, JSM, what is it and who is it for? So most people are familiar with Jira when they attend a webinar like this. And Jira, as we all know, is Atlassian's core issue tracking task management tool. Essentially, JSM has Jira's well-known issue management functionality, but it's rolled up into a service and support management tool. This allows for more advanced ticketing for internal and external customers and ultimately provides them with a service. So before we really start talking about the functionality and features of JSM, I want to spend some time talking about some of the questions that we often get as consultants surrounding who JSM is really for. So really at a high level, teams are service teams a lot of times without even realizing it. They are providing a service to either internal or external customers. And often there are a lot of channels of intake, as may have been in your experience as well. Those channels can include email, phone calls, even somebody passing you in the hallway. This is something that I experienced firsthand. In my past life, I was a field technician, so I would have folks stop me in the hallway saying, oh, I'm having problems with my email again, or my workstation's not working, or my keyboard's not working. And the problem with this is that there's no clear prioritization or tracking when we're receiving requests in this kind of ad hoc manner. Because these requests that are made are so vague, there's no visibility for the person who requested the work to let them know that their request is being handled. As I'm sure we all know, this can lead to the requester bothering us for updates. In some cases, going to our boss, asking them when our request is going to be handled. And we obviously don't want that, right? So there is a solution for this, though. And the solution at a high level is this idea of a service desk. And a service desk is essentially going to give us a generic intake form, which will keep requesters up to date on where their request is in the process, or in other words, or to use Jira language, what status it's in. And so, and then also to let our requesters know when it could be potentially resolved, all in one place. So that is just one example of many pertaining to who JSM is for. And this is kind of a slide to go around or to go with what I'm talking about here. With the service desk, we're supporting and tracking customer success. We have a central place to do so. We've connected an internal and external knowledge base to our service desk. In this case, our knowledge base within Jira Service Management is going to conveniently live in Confluence. It's a place where we can track and maintain SLAs, which we'll talk about in more detail later on in the presentation. Obviously, going back to our previous discussion about these channels, it gives us an opportunity to prioritize and manage requests, almost kind of in a first in, first out kind of basis. It gives us the opportunity to create a clean and highly customizable customer portal that's user-friendly, easy to navigate. And then also we have the great opportunity to utilize automation for Jira, which helps us automate repetitive tasks. So as sort of a teaser for our ITSM webinar that we're hosting next week, JSM has some advanced management features that we won't necessarily touch too much on in this webinar, but I just wanted to encourage you to pursue our ITSM webinar if you have any interest in learning more about things like incident management, problem management, change management, or Insight, which is essentially Atlassian's solution for an asset management tool. In this webinar, we actually also touch on Ops Genie and Status Page as well. So highly recommend this webinar. And again, we'll post a link for the chat. And actually, I see that we already have one in there. So please consult that at your leisure. All right, so before we go any further, I just wanted to provide a brief summary with some information about Expium and just give you a sense of who we are and what we do. Chiefly among those things, we are a Platinum Solutions partner with Atlassian. And what that means is that we provide a series of services. And the first of those services being training. We provide in-depth training sessions like this webinar, for example, but we also offer what we call a Jira Bootcamp. This is a 3-day deep dive into Jira, which will train you to essentially be a Jira admin in a very short amount of time. Can't recommend this course enough. We do Confluence training as well. And we also now offer a Jira Service Management Bootcamp, which we will also post a link for this bootcamp in the chat momentarily. Lastly, we offer user academies, which are more geared towards people who are using Jira tools on a daily basis, but aren't necessarily administering them. We offer consulting across the entire Atlassian suite of products for a wide range of organizations, ranging from small to large. And concerning the solutions we provide, it's important to note at this time that our parent company, Oasis Digital, is a full stack software development company. And what this means is that we can create custom software to where we can offer innovative solutions that integrate seamlessly with Jira. For example, we've developed apps, we've utilized custom integrations using the API, and we've even gone as far as building complete custom front ends for Atlassian products. So we're very proud of our partnership with our parent company. Our developers are very knowledgeable and can act as a liaison between the development world and Jira. So we're very pleased to have that partnership, and it's something we highly value. So enough chit chat here. Now that we've got a better idea of, now that you have a better idea of who we are and what we do as Expium, let's jump into the tool. One thing I want to mention actually before we get started here is that if you guys have any questions throughout this webinar, click the Q&A button that you see at the bottom of your screen and feel free to write your questions as we go along here. We'll cover these at the end, and typically I like to leave some time to where we can address those. So please don't be shy, feel free to ask us some questions. Okay. So now let's look at the tool. So jumping in now, we're going to start out in what you see, and this is the portal here. And what we like to call this at Expium is actually the portal of portals. And this is where your customers will first land when they come to your portal. You can see that there is actually a portal for each JSM project in Jira. We have the IT Service Desk project represented here. We have an HR Service Desk project represented here, and we also have a facility service desk represented here. Very easy to navigate. And also we have a search bar here up at the top. It's really, really handy. And we can search for almost anything here. We can search for knowledge articles, request types. Let's say I'm having an issue with a piece of hardware like my laptop. So if I just search hardware, here I can see that there are a few requests that come up for this search. One is a request for new hardware here. The other is, as you can see, a request for reporting a broken piece of hardware. And then also conveniently, we have a kind of generic get IT help request here that could also be really helpful if these two don't meet the criteria for the request that we would like to submit. And what's nice here actually is that we can submit a ticket right from this menu. If I click into one of these, we immediately jump right into the form. So really, really handy, really, really user-friendly. So if I go back here, let's go back to my search bar. So another example of a search that I could do, let's say I want to search for VPN not working. That's probably a pretty common one. Now, interesting, I have a few other options here. I have a few more request options at my disposal, but I also have this article section here. And as you can probably surmise here, these are going to be knowledge-based articles. And what the idea with knowledge-based articles being here for our customer is this idea of deflection. And with deflection, we want to see if we can help our customers resolve their issue without ever having submitted a request through our portal. This would obviously the end result and the happy path, and also takes the workload off of our service desk agents when our customers are channeled in this manner. So let's go back to our portal of portals, and I can do that by clicking this X here up at the top. All right, so I'm back here at my portal of portals. And probably the most common portal that your customers are going to use is going to be the IT Service Desk portal here. And when I click into it, you're going to have a lot of requests in your IT portal, which is definitely going to be the likely case for an IT portal. And with that being said, we like to break our requests into what we call portal groups within Jira. And that's what you see presented with here. So we have 4 different portal groups here. And within each group, you can expand them and see all the requests that are in this group. So it's just another way to break down how we organize these requests in our portal. And just, again, going back to ease of use for our end users here. So if I click into computers, for example, we can see a host of all types of requests here related to hardware, and not just a computer. We've got a request here for a new mobile device. We can request new software. So a lot of times too, we can have requests related to requests. Maybe our customer, isn't super familiar with our portal, so we have an opportunity here also to redirect them to a request maybe they didn't even know they needed. And so we have an opportunity to select a request a new laptop in the event of needing to order a new one. We also have, in the case which is probably pretty common in IT service desks, is to report broken hardware here. And again, once I click into one of these, I'm immediately taken to the form. So let's do that now. I would actually like to submit a broken hardware request just as an example, so you can kind of see how the form submission process works. So I'm going to go through here and fill out my form. And I'm met with a prompt to summarize my problem. So I can say, oh, I spilled coffee on my laptop. Pretty common issue, right? To date, I've never done that, so hopefully this is not this fictional case remains reality here. So I spilled coffee on my laptop, and an important thing to note here is that we have suggested articles here that pop up. And this is, again, kind of Jira's last-ditch effort at deflection. So even all the way up to when somebody's like, no, I just need to submit a request, we have suggested articles here that pop up. And these are all keying off of what I'm typing in the summary field, as you can surmise. And just to reiterate too, I know I mentioned briefly that Confluence integration is very alive with JSM, and that's ultimately where these knowledge articles live. So I'm going to go ahead. I see that these suggested articles aren't going to help me with my problem. That's very nice though that they're there. So I'm going to describe what happened, and I can just reiterate, obviously, what I mentioned here. And you get the idea. Now, quick plug here for Insight. We have the option here in this affected hardware field to select our hardware. And actually, what do you know? There's my MacBook Pro 13-inch 2020 with my name assigned to it. So this just kind of highlights very briefly, even on the customer portal side, how helpful Insight can be configuring your asset management database. So I'm going to go ahead and add the laptop that is associated with me. And then handy dandy here, I can actually paste a screenshot or drop a file here. If I need to send a field technician of my smoking laptop, I can do so here. And then obviously I've got the chance to submit an urgency here as well. In this case, I'm going to say, you know what, I've got a backup. I'll throw a medium urgency on this. And then obviously, you know what, I'm going to be very honest. I'm not going to be that guy that says, oh, I need this right away. It's an extensive, widespread issue. That would be dishonest. So I'm going to say it's minor, localized, since it's only affecting me. So at this point, I'm going to submit my ticket by clicking send here. So now that we've submitted our ticket, the overall view changes, as you can see, and all the fields that we filled out here are right down the center. And then down at the bottom, we see this section called activity. This is where all the updates for a particular ticket reside, and we can see statuses, transitions, any comments added to me or by me as the reporter, updates by somebody perhaps that I've shared the ticket with, updates from the service desk agent that happens to be working the ticket. I would see those represented here, and the list goes on. So for example, let's add a comment here. So I'll click in. And something I want to point out, so let's just say, you know, I lied. I actually need this workstation ASAP. Our service desk agents love seeing the word ASAP, the acronym ASAP rather. So right on the outset here, I want to point out that there are some options to change the formatting of my comment. We have some heading options. We can bold or italicize text. We have some other text options here. We can change the color. Everybody loves red text, right? So I can go ahead and highlight my text, change it to red to further communicate urgency. We can add a bulleted list. It's kind of handy. We can add URLs, and we can upload files and images as needed. And then also on this little plus icon here, we have a few other options: code snippets, dividers, quotes, and maybe or arguably one of the more important functions in the comment section is the @mention, which is actually pretty powerful. And I can show you why here. So let's say I'm borrowing one of Brian's backup machines, and I want to just keep him abreast of the changes that are happening with my request. So I'll go ahead and submit, or actually @mention Brian. And as you can see here, as soon as I type in the @ symbol, I'm met with a bunch of names of people in my organization. So that's really handy. So I went ahead and @mention Brian, and I'm going to go ahead and submit my comment by clicking save here. One thing to note here too is whenever you create an incident or a request in the service desk, you actually receive an email. So back to the comment section, you can actually reply to that message that you received on the creation of your request. And those comments are actually forwarded to the comment section of your request as well. So just a little side note there. So moving on now, we see some other helpful information for me as a customer to a service desk. I can see the current status of my issue, which is currently set to open. So I can surmise, obviously, that the agent hasn't picked up my request yet. I have the option to look at notifications. They're currently turned on. I can actually turn them off here as a customer. I probably don't want to do that, obviously, because I want to keep up to date on my issue. We have the request type that I submitted here. And we have this very helpful section here of shared with. And so obviously I'm the creator of this ticket, but you can see actually now that I've mentioned Brian that he shows up as somebody that I've shared this ticket with. So it's a really helpful way to populate this menu, and he will be kept up to date on this issue as well. And then if I click this plus button next to share, I have the option to add additional folks to my request. So let's say I need to add Wade as well. Or there's this idea in Jira of organizations. And I can show you guys this later if you'd like, but there's a menu in the back end of Jira called customers, where I have the option to organize my customers by organization. So just to further illustrate that, I've got Expium as an organization here, and I can share this request with all of Expium. And the idea here is hopefully the result of this is that we're keeping a large group of people, or however many people we designate within that group, in step with whatever the updates are in the issue. But then also the result would hopefully be that we're not overwhelming our service desk with duplicate incidents, and we can have everybody reference one. So very handy feature here. I'm not going to add the whole organization at this time. I love my coworkers. We don't want them to be notified of this ticket once we make that change. So lastly, here up at the top, we can see our search bar again, which should be familiar to you. This is the same search bar that we saw on the outset earlier. And then also a really important menu for you as a customer or a portal customer is this requests button up here, where we can see all requests that I have currently outstanding. We have the issue ID here. We have the summary that I've included here, and then the status, the service project it lives in. So some very high level information, but as a customer, that's probably all I'm going to need. And then we also have a summary of the issue type that I utilized, or request type rather, that I utilized when I submitted the request. So if I go back to requests here, I can also see, let's say I'm a manager and I need to look at all the approvals. I can do that right here from the portal and click approvals, and I can see any outstanding approvals here as well. And then I also have an all option to look at everything. So it's kind of a both and. All right, so now I would like to take a look at a request from the agent side. We've pretty well covered the customer side of Jira here. So I'm going to go back to the incident I submitted. And up here at the top, you can notice this kind of these creeping links here. And this ITSD prefix followed by the 313 is the issue key of this particular issue that whenever we submitted a request, it actually created, an issue in Jira. And we can navigate to that issue by actually clicking on this link here, which I will do now. One thing to note, a customer that doesn't have a license would actually not be able to do this. But since I'm an admin and a licensed agent, I'm able to navigate into the agent side of Jira with the link. So from this view, we can see a lot of things. We can see everything that was submitted on the form, who raised the request over here, which is me, I'm the reporter. And we can see all the comments that have been submitted thus far. So this is where we could see anything that our customer has posted in the comments. And we can also see our SLAs have started. So we have a time to first response SLA, which necessitates that we respond within 2 hours as an agent. And then we have a time to resolution that's prompting us to resolve this issue within 4 hours. And so let's start with the comment section, because that's where we're going to interact the most with our customers here. So we have the option, as you can see down here, to reply with an internal note, or we can actually reply to the customer. And as you can kind of infer here, adding an internal note is going to be for agents only. So this will be actually hidden from our customers. I can go ahead and save that. And just going back out to the portal here, just to illustrate that further, you can see that that comment is not visible on this side. And then obviously we have the option to reply directly to our customer. So we can say, I'm on it. Make our customer feel warm and fuzzy. And we'll go back out to our request in the portal. And we can see the agent just said they're on it. So other options here in the activity section where the comments reside, we can look at all history for this ticket. That starts at creation and kind of gives you information of everything in between. We can look at just comments. We can look at the overall history. And then we can look at work logs, which is actually something tied to an add-in called Tempo Timesheets, which we're not going to discuss today. But if you have any questions about it, feel free to ask after the webinar concludes here. And then we have time and status, which is a really helpful information for us as an agent to see how long an issue has been in a particular status. So moving on to how we interact with the ticket, we can see how the status is currently set to open here. And once, as an agent, we've committed to the work, we can actually assign the issue to ourselves, either manually here, or I happen to know beforehand that if I transition this issue to work in progress, I'm actually going to be prompted with a screen that we have on this transition to add myself as the assignee on this issue, since technically I am enacting work on this issue. And then I can also, I know I've already responded to my customers saying I'm on it, but here is an opportunity to let our customers know that we're addressing their issue. So I'll click investigate here. And you can see portal side also that our request is now updated to work in progress. And we see the comments from the agent here as well. So obviously, as we're working through the ticket, we're going to move it through the workflow. And actually, this is really handy to see. These are the options I have workflow-wise, or the different statuses that I can transfer this ticket to. So I have a pending option. I can cancel this ticket or resolve it. say the customer calls back in and says, you know what, this is no longer a problem. We could go ahead and resolve directly from this work in progress status. But there's also this handy workflow view here. And what's really nice about this is I can see obviously all my options within this workflow and see transitions. And then obviously the status that is highlighted is the current status that my request resides in. So very helpful as an agent to know what workflow I'm using. And in this case, this is the very robust and useful incident management workflow that comes with out-of-box Jira Service Management. Very great workflow, very functional. So I do want to just jump obviously back into the customer portal side. We obviously see that this is now in a status of work in progress. We see the comments. And just a note here as well, as a customer, you will also receive a notification letting you know that your issue is now in a status of work in progress. So just a handy note there with regards to notifications. So going back to the agent view here, we've already, let's say we've completed the work on our issue and it's time to close it. So at this point, I would go ahead and click my drop down and go ahead and utilize the resolve transition, which will take me to a completed status. And then you can also see that automatically a resolution has been added of done, denoted by this green check mark here as well. And if I refresh my page, look at that, we're on fire. We have our SLAs of time to first response met, denoted by this green check mark, and then we've also met our SLA for time to resolution. So just something to note here that our SLAs will update based on our work completed on this ticket. So going down the rest of the details panel, you can see a myriad of other fields here that we can interact with. Let's say I needed to change the assignee on this ticket. Obviously, in this case, this issue is completed, so reassigning the issue would be kind of a moot point, but let's say it's still open and I need to reassign it to Connor. I can do so by clicking an assignee here. I'm presented with some options here, but I can also search for users. So let's say Connor was a mistake and this needs to go to Steve to work on. So really handy, very quick to be able to reassign issues there. Let's say our customer called back in and said, you know what, like I really need this resolved as soon as possible. We can update our priority right here to reflect that. We can utilize labels, which those of you who are maybe more familiar with the Jira software side of things, you're probably familiar with labels, but labels can be utilized in JSM as well and are very helpful in organizing issues. We have this option to view our knowledge base, and we have 3 related articles here that might be helpful for us as a service desk agent to help resolve this issue in a quick and timely manner. We have our option to add organizations again here. So very similar to the customer portal, if as an agent we decide that we want to keep everybody in the loop on this issue organizationally, we can do that here. And we also have some other helpful things. We can flag this as a major incident, or if there's some automation rules that we need to kick off here, we're able to do so right here within the ticket. Some other things that I think you'll find very helpful in this view are the watch issue function here at the top. As an agent, I can click this button and it adds me as a watcher to this issue, so I can keep up to date on where this issue is at and what status it's in. And then also we have the option to vote on this issue with a thumbs up icon. And then you're probably familiar with this icon, but we can share this issue with other folks on our team and add a brief message. And then this ellipses over here actually offers a wealth of other options to us. We can, let's say this issue is miscategorized or it needs to be a subtask nested under another issue. We can do so here, convert it to a subtask. We have the option to move the issue, clone it, delete it. This find your field option is actually very helpful. As an agent, if I am not seeing a field that I want to see on this particular issue, and let's say it's a chronic problem and I need to contact my Jira admin about it, I can search for every field that I have actually within this project, and it'll let me know, yep, actually you have access to that field, or in the case of some other fields, it may not be available. And this tool is very, very helpful in troubleshooting this because it'll tell us why that's not included and what we can do to remedy the issue. something I use quite frequently, to be honest with you. And then we have some export options and the ability to print. So very quickly, I want to jump back out to the customer portal and submit another request with the intention of showing you how approvals work within JSM. And if you remember our computers category out in the portal, this time we're going to submit a request a new laptop request. So I'm back out to our portal of portals. We go to our IT service desk here, and we click into computers. And at the bottom, or actually at the top rather, we're going to request a new laptop. And we can say our reason for requesting a new laptop is we can say, you know what, it's damaged. So very similar to our other request, we can say, I damaged it, I threw it at the wall. And we can say, you know, we can obviously suggest which model we would like. In this case, I want another MacBook Pro. And just like our other request, we click send to submit it. And very similarly, we're met with our summary of our request. But on a different note, we can actually see that this is in a status of waiting for approval. And then as a customer, I can see there's one approval needed. To give just a little bit, or shed a little bit more light on this, let's navigate to the issue on the agent side. And we can see as an agent, one approval is needed. And when I click on this, I can actually see that the approver is Brian Darr. So in this case, Brian could be my manager, and it's waiting on approval for him. And it's important to note here, because this is something we get asked about a lot, is that yes, if you are an approver, you will receive an email. And yes, you can actually approve from that email as a manager. You don't necessarily have to dive into Jira to approve. But in that vein, I want to show you how you would approve this issue if you were to navigate within the tool to this particular issue. So for the sake of demoing that, I'm going to actually say, you know what, I'm my own manager today. And I'm going to approve my own request here. And what I'll do is go ahead and refresh the page. So pretending that I'm the manager, this is actually what I would see now is this very pleasing green approve button that I can click to approve this request. And you see that no longer one approval is needed and that we have successfully transitioned to a waiting for support status. And this makes me happy as a customer because when I navigate to the portal, I can see that my request is no longer waiting for approval. It is now in the hands of support, and I'm optimistic that I will receive my new laptop soon. So that's just a quick demo of approvals, but a lot of options there. All right, so I think we've sufficiently broken down the issue view and interacting with the ticket itself, both on the customer side and the portal side. I want to take some time to talk about queues, which are a huge part of Jira Service Management. So I'm going to click back to the project here. And you can see right here at the top, queues are conveniently located here. So as you can probably infer, queues are how tickets are sorted for us as the agent. This is where we spend most of our time looking for the work that we need to do. And we can build our queues in a manner that makes sense to the people doing the work. So for example, just looking at some of the queues that we have here, we have a queue for looking at all open tickets, which aptly named, it'll show us all of the open tickets within our project. We also have a all my tickets option here. And this will show the agent specifically all the work that is directly assigned to them. And this queue will be different for each agent. And so meaning it is particular to who is logged in at the time and when they're viewing this queue. And then there's an open tasks queue that specifically shows all task issue types that are open in a project. So right out of the gates with some of the out-of-box queues here, we can see that there's a fair amount of customization here of what we want to visualize in queues. And queues, if you're familiar with this idea of filters in Jira, queues are essentially a filter, and they're built on top of a filter. So we have a lot of options, a lot of customization options with regards to queues. One quick little thing here that I find very helpful personally is that we have this option to star queues, and we can do so just by hovering over the queue and clicking the star button. And why this is so helpful is because we may have more queues in our particular service management project than what you see here in our demo site. And it is an opportunity for me as an agent to view my most used queues very much, or at the top here, which is very convenient. And we can unstar them, obviously, to move them back to the category that they originally resided in. So let's talk about creating a queue. So in order to create a queue down here, we can click Manage Queues at the very bottom left. And here we have an opportunity to recategorize our queues just simply by dragging them between our two categories here, Team Priority and Other, that you saw reflected on the side here. And then to create a queue, we would click the Create a Queue here up at the top right. And right on the outset, we have the opportunity to name our queue. So we can just say this is a test new queue. And then our next option here is to filter our queue. So just going back to what I said previously, queues are very similar to filters. And we have the option to filter either by JQL, which is Jira Query Language. And Jira Query Language is a way that we can, on a very granular level, visualize issues within Jira. But we also, if we're not super comfortable with JQL, we have the option to switch to the basic view here, which we can do by this link. And so we can switch back and forth. So if I switch to basic, I'm met with a much more user-friendly option to interact with these drop-down menus that you see here, where I can pick issue types, I can pick issues by status, whether or not they're resolved. And then we also have the option to add more criteria here with the plus more button that you see here highlighted in blue. But just to briefly demo JQL, just some simple queries. Obviously, resolution equals unresolved is a pretty powerful query in and of itself. But let's say I wanted to look at issues that were are just in a resolution of done. We can type in equals. And actually, I don't even have to type anything. I can just remove my previous query. And something to point out, this is really, really helpful if you're learning JQL. Jira kind of helps you along. As you can see, I'm met with a bunch of autofill options here. And so this is a great way to learn JQL. You're presented with options after your operators here. And then also there's a very handy syntax help link here that we can navigate to just very briefly. If you're familiar with Atlassian products, you probably know that they have a very rich documentation ecosystem that I highly recommend. And in this article here is no exception. This is a very, very helpful article for Jira Query Language, also known as JQL. So that will help you out a lot in your JQL journey. But let's say I wanted a queue of where I'm just looking at everything that's in a resolution of done. Very quickly, we can see a summary of what our queue is going to pull up, which is very helpful. We can assess whether or not these results are going to be helpful to us. So let's try a little bit more granular of a filter. Let's go back to resolution of unresolved, which is what we were met with on the outset. And let's add and a status of let's say equals waiting for customer. And you can see Jira helps me along. I can click here or hit enter, but I'll just click. It's going to update my case sensitive things here. And look at that. Look at that. We have our 5 issues here. So this is very, very specific. We can get as granular as we want with filters within queues. So just showing you a little bit more of a honed queue here. And then I have the option down here to add columns, which is really, really helpful. You can add a resolution column. You can see that this is congruent with what my query is saying here, that I want to look for issues, the resolution of unresolved. So overall, this is just kind of a very broad look at queues. And there are other options that we can enable within Jira Service Management queues for service requests, incidents, problems, changes. And again, queues are just a very quick way to look at issues that are assigned to me or based on filters that I've created. One very important thing to note that we run into a lot when we're consulting organizations in Jira is basically being good custodians of your queues. We really want to make sure that our queues are helpful, and they are helpful when they are accurate. An example of this and a problem that we see frequently is when a request type gets renamed, and let's say your queue is querying based on request type, but you forget as a Jira admin to go over to your queues and update that request type change that you made, or naming change rather. What you'll end up having is a queue that no longer works, work that's backing up in your service desk, and agents that are none the wiser. So just a quick example of how important it is to make sure that your queues are accurate and helpful to your service desk. All right, so now that we've covered the main points of JSM, including the customer portal and the agent sides along with queues, I want to shift to looking at SLAs. And just as a quick note, it's important to note that you have to be a project admin to configure SLAs. So what I'm going to do here from this screen, I'm going to click back to project, and then I'm going to actually go to project settings, and I'm going to discard my changes here. I don't want to save this queue. And if I scroll towards the bottom here, you will see SLAs. So I've mentioned, just kind of peppered throughout the presentation, SLAs. And for those of you that aren't familiar with SLAs, SLA, as you can see, stands for Service Level Agreement, which is basically the level of service that our team is committed to and is providing to our customers, whether they are internal or external. SLAs are usually a goal that you commit to providing. So you're essentially saying that you are committed to meeting this goal within a certain amount of time, often based on request type. That being stated, let's look at SLAs from the back end, which is where essentially we are now. And so we can see the SLAs that are available to us in this project. We have a time to resolution SLA. We have a time to first response SLA. We have a time to close after resolution, and we have a time to review a normal change SLA. So let's look at the time to resolution SLA, for example, first. And I can expand this SLA by clicking this caret icon here, or button rather. And we have a wealth of information here and configuration options. We can see on the outset that we have given ourselves 4 hours to resolve tickets in the category of incidents. We can see that we've given or agreed upon a time goal of 8 hours to resolve tickets that are categorized as service requests. And then we can see that there is no target designated for all remaining issues. Within SLAs and JSM, we have this idea of conditions. And this is going to be where we summarize or really configure when we start counting time, when we pause it, or when we finish counting time. And so in this case, we are counting time when an issue is created, which makes total sense, obviously, or when a resolution is cleared. So for example, this could be, we've already resolved our issue and we think that it's resolved. And our customer calls back into our service desk, letting us know, actually, this issue came back up. And so we've reopened the issue. We've cleared the resolution on this particular issue. And so therefore, time will start counting again. We have the option to pause, or actually we've configured this SLA to pause counting time when our issue is in a status of pending or waiting for customer, which makes sense. We don't want to be penalized from an SLA standpoint if we're waiting on more information from our customer. And then very aptly here, we have a resolution set. That's when we're finishing counting time, which makes sense. At this point, I want to go back, and you probably noticed this calendar here, which we're utilizing the sample 9 to 5 calendar. And basically what this is doing, and actually I can show you by navigating to this calendar icon at the top right, is saying our work week is Monday through Friday, and it's a 9 to 5. We have our workday ending at 1,700 hours, and we can designate our time zone. In this case, we're in the Central Time Zone. But we have the opportunity to add additional calendars that can be essentially 24/7 or anything in between by clicking this Add Calendar option here at the top. And here we can give our calendar a name. We can designate the time zone that we're in, and then we can even add Saturday and Sunday if need be. And we have the opportunity to add some holidays here at the bottom. So great opportunity for customization when it comes to calendars and configuring SLAs. So speaking of SLAs and tracking support in our service desk project, or tracking performance rather, the way we do this is actually through reports in Jira. So I'd like to take some time to talk about reports. So we're going to discard our changes there. And if we go back to our project up at the top here, and if we scroll down under the knowledge category, we have the option to look at reports. So I'm going to navigate there now. And we have some default reports that come out of box with Jira Service Management. And then we also have a custom report section, which denotes reports that we've created ourselves. You can create your own reports by clicking down here at the bottom, clicking New Report. You can give your report a name. You have the option to add some series here, labels. You can add a filter. It's a lot of options here, and you can see that we've created a myriad of other custom reports here. But for going back to our discussion about SLAs and how reporting can be helpful with discussing SLAs and measuring performance, let's take a look at the SLA met versus breached report. So I'm going to discard my changes here. So, for example, this is saying that we've met 6 SLAs and we've breached 49 in the past 7 days. And what's really nice about this report is it's very, very flexible. We can change the time frame. We can look as close as past, or as the past 48 hours. We can look at the past 14 days, all the way up to the past year by month or week. And then we also have the option to add a custom range, which is really, really helpful. But going back to our 7-day view here, so you can see as a team, we're not performing so hot here. Just full disclosure, this is a demo site, so a lot of the issues that we create, are orphaned and just kind of left out there. So we do a better job than this in helping our customers here. So that being said, though, this report is going to show us how many SLAs were met on a given day, how many were breached on a given day. And really the overarching purpose of these reports is to prompt you to ask the question of why. For example, why are we breaching SLAs here? Or what can we do differently to meet them? I could see this report being very helpful to those in management positions over a service desk within a given organization. Another report that may help us track down the answer to the proverbial question of why is the workload report, which I'll navigate to now. And here we can see a number of issues that are currently being worked on by each user. And we can see that Connor appears to be handling the lion's share of our work here. And a couple of things that we could infer from this report. We don't want to assume the worst in our friend Connor here. So we could say that Connor may be having trouble with the demand. He obviously has more tickets than everyone else here on the team. And so therefore, a knock-on effect could be that he's having problems with breaching SLAs because he's overloaded. In this case, we could see an opportunity as a manager within a service desk to redistribute our work more fairly. And so Connor isn't inadvertently our bottleneck here. And we can see that SLAs, as a result, hopefully will be met more frequently. Let's say that this isn't the case, that we have a disproportionate distribution of work here, and that work is actually spread out evenly, but we're still not hitting our SLAs. It may be the SLA itself that is the problem. It may be the case that it's too aggressive and we need to adjust our customers' expectations a little bit. So this is a great way to see how reports can kind of give us pieces to the overall puzzle and give us a broad picture of performance and help us to pivot and make changes as needed based on the information that was provided to us. Another report I just want to show you very briefly, and then we'll get to questions here, is this request deflective report, only because I think it's pretty cool. And what this report does is, this isn't necessarily related to SLAs, but this helps your team hone their knowledge base by letting you know from a managerial perspective on a high level whether or not your knowledge base is really effective with regards to request deflection. So just to illustrate this further, we have this request deflected in portal metric here. If I go back out to my portal of portals and I search for a knowledge article here, we can go to this first one here, VPN troubleshooting. At each knowledge article in the portal view, we have this option to click yes or no on did this article help? And we can click yes, and we're met with a very friendly message here. And that's ultimately what's driving this metric here. So it's real-time metrics that get refreshed rather quickly, that we can see real-time data coming in from our service desk, from our customers, that'll let us know and have valuable insight as to whether or not our knowledge articles are effective. And we can adjust accordingly if we find that they're not. We can also see that this provides us with an opportunity to view articles, or how many views rather we're getting from the portal here. So also very, very helpful information. All right. So I just want to, I want to take some time, obviously, we've got a few minutes for questions. Just want to let you know I am on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me directly with any questions that you might have in the event that we don't get to them during the end of our meeting here today. Here's my email address. Also, feel free to reach out to me directly. This is actually, I apologize, my the wrong email address, so I apologize there. I will actually put the correct email address in the chat. I had a wicked case of muscle memory there, so apologies there. I went ahead and put my email there in the chat, so feel free to reach out with any questions. I will be following up with each of you after our meeting concludes today. So let's jump into Q&A. We've got a few minutes here. Yes, great question. So there is a mobile app version of JSM. So the question, I apologize, let me just rephrase the question. The question was, is there a mobile app version? Yes, and just to give you an example, we've had facilities teams in particular that find the mobile app very helpful. As you can imagine, facilities teams are often out and about. They can navigate to the Jira app. They can transition issues directly from their phone. So yes, I encourage you, if you have any questions, further questions about the mobile app, feel free to reach out to me. I can hopefully give you some more helpful information there. But yes, the mobile app for Jira Service Management is very helpful, specifically for portal customers. Yeah, let's see. So yeah, okay, there's a question here about the difference between a ticket and a task. And maybe the distinction that I'd like to draw here is really the difference between an issue type and a request type in Jira. And I'm hoping that answers your question. If it doesn't, please feel free to email me after our webinar here. But essentially, if you're familiar with Jira, everything is an issue. And then with JSM, we have the introduction of this idea of request types. And issue types give your requests their foundational features, such as their fields, workflow statuses, while request types give your requests their specific settings, such as naming and portal customization. So a single issue, to kind of take that a little bit further, a single issue in Jira can actually be the basis for many different request types. And so just to illustrate that a little bit further, if I go back to our project settings, and if I look at request types, you can, well, actually first, let's look at issue types very briefly here. We have all of our issue types of change, incident, problem. These are probably pretty familiar to you if you're from the ITSM world. But if we go into request types, we have the opportunity to actually associate as many request types as we want with an issue type. So you can actually see here within this menu, I've got the request type of fix account problem associated with the service request issue type. I have the new mobile device request type associated with service request with approval, so a different issue type. But you can actually see this is really, really powerful because it allows you from an administrative standpoint to not necessarily need or require that many issue types within your instance, and you can associate multiple request types and utilize the same workflows that are tied to those issue types. All right. See if I have any other questions here. Yeah, so we have a question about, yeah, the mobile app. Yeah, feel free to email me directly about the mobile app. I know we're nearing the end of our hour here, but I would love to discuss that with you at length, and we can kind of discuss the app itself and a little bit more of that functionality there. I see a question here. How's Jira different from Rally? I confess, I don't know that I fully understand your question, but again, feel free to reach out to me directly, and we can maybe address that more off the call here. Permissions to delete tickets can be limited to admins or specific groups. Absolutely, yeah. So this is something we can handle in the permission scheme here. We can absolutely, yeah, that functionality exists. We can keep our agents from deleting issues. And quite frankly, that's probably something that we would want to do from a governance standpoint. All right, great questions, great questions. By all means, feel free again. I know I sound like a broken record. Feel free to reach out to me directly. I've linked, or actually I've included my email address in the chat. It has been a pleasure meeting with all of you today. I thank you so much for your attention, and I look forward to following up with you later on. Thanks, everyone.